Okay, now it's recording, so everything you say I can type up later.
Oh, don't type up everything.
Everything important. So tell me about your parents. Like, what was their background and how did they meet?
Both were born of humble parents. My father was born on a farm in Smithfield, Utah, and grew up until he went away to college as a farmer.
Okay.
And after he graduated, he got a job with International Harvester Company, so he went back to another aspect of farming, that is farm equipment. And he, for years, dealt with dealers of International Harvester farm equipment and trucks, but mainly farm equipment, throughout Utah and parts of Arizona, Nevada, Idaho. So he traveled a lot. When I was growing up, he traveled a lot.
And what was he like as a person?
My dad was quiet. He was, a lot of people thought he was somewhat severe, and he did kind of have that appearance about him, but he was a gentleman. He never, ever, ever spoke harshly or struck the kids. He would tell us when he thought we were wrong, but there was never any what today would be called abuse involved. No, he was a good man, good father.
And did he, so how was he in the church?
Oh, he was always very active and held leadership roles, including member of stake presidency, high council, bishopric.
And how was that affected with him traveling?
Well, what happened when he was, during his years of travel, he was in the stake presidency and high council. The travel plus the church time required took even more time from the family. He was very busy. He was not a lazy man at all. Constantly occupied, and with those tasks, he of course was very busy.
And did he have any hobbies or anything?
No, I don't think so.
Did
He kept a diary, which I have somewhere, but it's a fairly sketchy diary. It's not complete in the sense that his feelings really aren't communicated too much. It was just events. And he was a quiet man, including with his thoughts. He did not express himself. If he felt the need to chastise and correct his kids, but he did it in a loving way. He was a good man. He was a simple man. His education was limited to high school, and he had some college, but it was not enough to matter. I mean, he might have had a part of the first year or something. Something like that. He grew up on a farm, and married and started raising kids, and so his life was pretty much dedicated to his job and family. Yeah.
Do you have any specific memories with him?
Oh yeah, sure. He was in his job. He had during a certain period of time, over a number of years, he traveled a lot. He was gone from Monday till Friday. And so when I was growing up, we felt the absence of a father. And then he usually came home on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, on the weekend, and then would leave again on Monday. That wasn't every week, but it was most weeks. He traveled for years. He was what they called a blockman for the company he worked for, International Harvester, and was responsible for making sure that all of the dealers in his area or block were properly supplied with parts and equipment. He worked for International Harvester, which manufactures tractors and also trucks. They manufacture trucks. But he was in the farm equipment side, so tractors and farming equipment was his specialty. And he dealt with dealers throughout the state of Utah and parts of Nevada, a good part of Nevada and Idaho, the main areas as I remember it.
And so, do you remember, like I'm sure you were pretty young, but do you remember how the Depression affected his business?
He was out of work for a while. And it was while I was alive. I was born in 1932, so that was Depression time. And by the time I can remember things, he was working. I don't remember him being out of work. Just stories from my mother. He never talked about it. But so whatever I learned was from my mother. Because when I was born, he was without work. But by the time my memory started working, he was working. So I don't have any recollection of no work.
Okay. And then your mom. Tell me about your mom.
My mother was an angel.
I'm sure she was.
No, well, he was good too. He was a good man. He was very quiet. He didn't talk a lot. He would chastise the children when he felt they needed it, but it was verbally. He never hit us or anything like that. My mother was kind, gentle, loving, perfect mother. Yeah, she was. And she was hardworking. I mean, she had 8 children.
Wow.
And 2 died in infancy, so she raised 6 kids. And that's in itself is a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. So, let's see.
And she came from both of them came from poor families. She had up through high school. My dad did not get all of his high schooling done. Neither had any college education. But they were highly motivated in doing what's right. Both of them, and they were united in that effort. They loved each other tremendously, and that was always visible to us as children as we were growing up.
Do you know how they met?
No. No, my dad was from Smithfield, Utah, up north, and my mother was from Salt Lake City. And I probably did know at one time, but I don't remember how they met. My sister might remember, but I don't remember the story about how they met. I do have a life history that my dad wrote.
Oh, do you?
I don't know whether you got a copy of that or not. No, I don't remember. I think that they.
Okay. Hopefully it just keeps going. Okay, so you. Okay. So. Let's see. So Tanner had one question. All right, so Rob wanted to know what your grandma was like as a person.
Which grandma?
The one that lived with you.
Oh, Grandma Peterson.
Uh-huh. What you doing, hon?
She was about 4'11",
Mm-hmm.
very short,
Wow.
slender, and very quiet. She lived with us as long as I can remember. I don't know
It's not recording his face.
when her husband died, when my grandpa died. I don't remember it, my grandpa Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
So he died when I was very young, or maybe even before I was born. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But Grandma Peterson lived with us, and she died. And she provided considerable help to my mother, and was a babysitter,
Mm-hmm.
and very quiet, petite lady.
Did she spoil you at all?
My grandma?
Yeah.
No. No. She didn't have much to do with the raising of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her as an old lady. My earliest memory of her as a child, she was, at least in my mind, she was old.
Yeah.
She was very frail. She was very short. She was under 5 foot and skinny. Didn't say much.
Mm-hmm. Did she go to church with you?
Mm-hmm.
Think of any questions? Background?
I never did know my grandpa Peterson. He
Mm-hmm.
died before I was born,
Mm-hmm.
or if he died after I was born, I don't. He died when I was so young. I don't have any memories of him.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandma Peterson lived with us until she.
Mm-hmm. Did she pretty much take care of herself, or did?
Oh yes.
Okay.
She was very short. She was under 5 foot, and she looked like she was frail, but she wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
She had had a hard life and worked hard, and even when she lived with us, she was very busy and helping my mom.
Mm-hmm.
What did she do to keep herself occupied? Do you remember?
Well, she helped with the housework. She visited with her sister frequently,
Mm-hmm.
and she would go on her own. She'd go take the streetcar and
Mm-hmm.
or the bus, or no, it could have been the streetcar then too. And visit her sister, and Amanda.
Did her sister live close?
Fairly close, yeah. She had to take the bus or the streetcar to get there, but it was fairly close.
Mm-hmm. And did you meet the sister?
Oh yeah,
Good.
yeah. They were both about the same height, 4'10".
Uh-huh. Funny.
They looked a lot alike, so you knew that they were sisters.
Uh-huh. What
Her name was.
her sister's name was Amanda. What was your grandma's upbringing and background like? Do you know?
Well, they were not wealthy. I don't remember when my grandpa died. I don't remember him. I had some vague memories of him when I was a child. and when he died, my grandma moved in with us, and I was very small at that time, maybe before I was born. I don't have much memory in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any real memory of my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
Did they come from a farming family?
No, they were immigrants from Denmark,
Mm-hmm.
and
Your grandfather immigrated from Denmark?
grandpa and grandma, both of them. That's on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I don't have any real memories of him.
Mm-hmm.
So he died when I was very, very young.
Did she speak Danish fluently?
My grandmother?
Right.
Oh, yes.
Would she ever speak Danish to you?
I don't remember her ever speaking Danish. She was very quiet. She seldom spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And, no, she spoke English. It was broken English, but she spoke English.
Mm-hmm. Did she have any hobbies? Did she like to do crafts or anything?
Not that I remember. I remember her being busy with helping my mother in the house and taking care of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
She died when I was young, very young, so I don't really have too many specific memories of her. I remember what she looked like and that she was there and helpful.
Why did she die?
As far as I was concerned, she died of old age.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever, I guess, do you know why your grandfather and grandmother Peterson immigrated from Denmark?
Well, it was a common occurrence in those days, looking for a better life and being closer to the church, I guess. They were both converts in Denmark. I assume those are the major motives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any others.
Was your mother close to any of her brothers or sisters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on weekends we would visit, frequently visit with her siblings that lived in town.
Mm-hmm.
That was really just two of her brothers. She had a sister that lived in Oklahoma and another brother that lived in Texas.
So you didn't know those two very well?
No.
What were the ones in town like? What were their names?
Gustav
Mm-hmm.
was one of them. He died as a fairly young man, and I remember him only vaguely as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But his wife Edna and my mother were very close,
Mm-hmm.
and we would visit them, as far as I remember, every Sunday at least. And there were two daughters, and the younger daughter was Leon's age, so just a year younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had acquaintance with her on an ongoing basis during my teenage years. In fact, she dated my best friend.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
This was your cousin?
Mm-hmm.
And who was
Carol.
your best friend? What was his name?
Dick
Dick.
Board.
And then, so there was Gus and Edna, and then there was another brother?
Yes, Lou.
Lou?
Louis. Lou.
Mhm.
That was Uncle Lou. And what was her name? Edith? No. And Edith. Yeah, Edith.
Mhm. And what were they like?
I don't remember much about him because he died when I was very young.
Mhm.
And in fact, all of my brothers, my mother's brothers died young.
Mm.
So I don't have much recollection
Mhm.
of them. I do have some, vague memories, but And the one brother that did survive longer lived in Oklahoma, so we didn't see him very often.
Was your mother the youngest child?
Yes.
And with Lou, did he leave behind children?
Let's see. Yeah, he had children, cousins.
Did you see them very often?
No, they lived in Texas.
Oh, Lou's children lived in Texas. Okay.
Lou lived in Texas too.
Oh, okay. Okay. What about, so did you have a favorite uncle on that side, on the Peterson side?
Probably Uncle Gus, because he lived in town, and we used to go to their house every Sunday. And his wife was very friendly and outgoing, and they had a daughter that was Leon's age, that we maintained contact with. In fact, she used to date my best friend, thanks to me.
You introduced them?
Uh-huh.
Oh, funny.
How'd you introduce them?
I arranged the date.
Oh, okay. How many children were in your mother's family?
There were 6 or 7. Yeah, 6 or 7.
Okay, and then on your dad's side of the family, what were your aunts and uncles? How many were there? Who were your favorites?
It was Bertha, Edith, Lawrence, Elvin. 4 that I can remember.
And it was Bertha, Edith.
Bertha, Edith, Melvin,
Melvin,
and
Lawrence.
And Dad, so there were 5.
What was Bertha like?
Bertha was the oldest, and she was very friendly. We enjoyed visiting with her. She lived in a small town in northern Utah called Richmond, which was just north of Smithfield, where my grandparents lived. So yeah, we used to see them frequently. And Dad's other sister lived in Ogden.
Edith?
Edith. We used to see her often. The 2 boys, Melvin lived in Smithfield, Lawrence lived in California. Yeah.
Did Melvin live with his parents in Smithfield?
No, he was married.
Oh, he was married.
Uh-huh.
He was the uncle that would shoot milk into your mouth from the cow?
Yes.
Okay. So, did you see Lawrence very often at all?
No.
Never? Or not
No.
too often?
Well, no, Lawrence moved, he moved to California when I was very young, and we didn't have much contact with him. Where's Marilyn?
Outside.
We used to go to Smithfield every year, so I was well acquainted with my grandparents, and my dad's siblings that lived in Ogden, Smithfield, and Richmond. He had a brother that lived in California, who was the youngest brother, I believe. Either Lawrence or Melvin were the young. Those were the youngest too. I don't remember which was younger. I think Lawrence was second youngest and Melvin was the youngest. But we didn't have much contact with Lawrence, so I don't remember much about him or visiting with him. Don't know anything about his children.
What was Melvin's personality like? Was he fun?
Yeah, he had a fun personality, was jovial. He had a birth defect. that didn't affect him as far as his personality was concerned. But I guess he laid against his mother's spine in the room, against the backbone or someplace, and he had a concave forehead. And but he was a nice guy, and we all liked Melvin.
And then Edith, what was she like?
Edith was an outgoing, bossy, kind, nice aunt. She was a good aunt.
Did she make you work when you were visiting?
No. But she bossed her siblings around and her children, of course. She just had two children, two girls. And the youngest girl, Carol, was just a year younger than me. And in latter years we had contact. In fact, I lined her up with my good friend, and he dated her for quite a while, and we double dated a lot, so I got to have that contact with my cousin.
And what was your cousin's name?
Carol.
Oh, Carol. Yeah, you said that. Okay. And Bertha, she's the last one. What was she like?
Bertha was fun. She was country-ish. She lived in Richmond, Utah, a little town north of Smithfield. Farmer's wife. But she had a very outgoing personality, a jovial demeanor. I mean, jovial personality too. So we all liked Bertha.
Did you have a favorite on your dad's side?
Probably Bertha.
Bertha? Okay. Good. And then, okay, so we can go on to the questions that we came up with today.
Okay. We wanted to ask you a few questions about your mission, if that's okay.
Sure.
So we're reading through, and
Wasn't there one before that?
the Air Force.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, we were going to ask a few questions about your first 2 years of college. So your first year, you enrolled, you were taking classes, you were in the LDS social club, Lambda Delta Sigma. Did you do any other extracurricular activities? Did you go on any dates? Were you part of any clubs?
No clubs. I worked, so I went to school and I went to work.
Where did you work?
For security, but where did I work before that?
The advertising agency?
Yes, John Evans Advertising Agency.
And what did you do there?
Oh, just kind of handyman work. We'd set up the material for silk screening and actually spread the ink and set them out to dry, set them out all over the
So you would
company.
silk screen like company posters?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Like travel?
Right, all kinds of posters, big posters.
So how did you set up for silk screening?
Well, the silk screen is already prepared because the time before when it was used, it had to be cleaned. So the next time it was used, the screen was ready, and we just had to prepare the different colors of paints, and usually we would do good sized posters. Not as long as this table, but almost as long as this table and half as wide.
So about 4 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet by 2 feet?
Let's see, yeah, 3 feet, maybe a little more than 3 feet by a foot and a half, 2 feet. Yeah. And advertising posters. And the artists, the guys that worked up the artwork, would cut the silk screen and cut the silk screen was a couple of layers, and they'd cut away a layer that impeded the ink from going through. So once that's cut away, we put ink on the on the end, and then with the long big squeegee, run it across, and that would put ink where the pattern allowed. And I did that for, this was while I was in college, freshman and sophomore. And John Evans Advertising Company. I got the job through a good friend of mine, a school friend, who worked there also. Worked there before me. He got me the job.
Lamar?
Lamar, yeah. That's him.
And so when you would do silk screens, did you have to run it through more than one time for different colors?
Yes, but you have to do one color at a time. Set it aside and let it dry. So the rooms were just filled with posters drying on everything that was that would hold a flat piece of cardboard.
Wow.
Poster paper, I should say.
That's fun.
Do you remember how much you made per hour?
Probably minimum wage.
Do you remember what that was?
50 cents an hour,
50 cents?
maybe. I don't remember, but it's probably 50 cents.
Yeah.
There was a time when it was 50 cents in my youth, and that's probably what it was.
So you took a lot of, you said you took a lot of wonderful classes from Dr. Eyring, Arnold Freeberg, O.C. Tanner. Was there anything that struck you about your education? Was it worthwhile?
Yeah.
Would you, I don't know. What are your opinions on education?
Well, I loved my college life.
Yeah.
Even as a freshman and sophomore, which was at a time when I was very young and innocent, but I enjoyed it tremendously. And I worked after school, after classes, but I enjoyed it. I had to take certain required classes, of course, and I was aiming towards a business degree. But I did take art classes, which I enjoyed tremendously, literature classes. Of course, some of those were strictly elective, and some satisfied the humanities requirements. But I enjoyed my college life. I didn't have a car, so I had to take a bus everywhere I went. And to get to the University of Utah from my house in the Sugar House area meant three means of conveyance, 3 buses transferring from one to the other. And I didn't have a car, I couldn't afford a car. At least for the first 2 years, college, freshman, sophomore years, that's the way I lived. And loved going to college, got rid of my required courses, and I don't remember whether I had decided on a major or not. I don't think I was clear in my mind. But then I had a lengthy interruption because I went in the military for a couple of years and on a mission for 2.5 years. So I was gone for 4.5 plus years.
Do you think there's any one class that affected you more than others, or any subject that helped you learn?
The undergraduate years, those first 2 years, I took a course called Philosophy of Religion, which I found extremely interesting. And it was not Mormon philosophy, but philosophy of religion, and a very, very good teacher, Dr. Eyring, Henry Eyring. And he was LDS, but I think a little bit of a rebel, but I enjoyed the class a lot.
And
The other classes that I took during that 2-year period were mainly required courses for graduation.
Is Henry Eyring related to the Henry Eyring?
Oh yes, yeah, it's all in the family.
You joined the Air National Guard to avoid the Korean conflict.
Right.
Did that, aside from serving in California, did that affect you in any way? The Korean conflict, did it? Did you have any personal experiences with that, or?
Not really. It was. If you have to escape the draft, I did it. That's you do what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was able to join a National Guard unit in Salt Lake to avoid the draft, but we were immediately activated and on active duty for 2 years or 2.5 years, I don't remember. But in the Air Force, and I was in the U.S. all the time, either in Southern California or Virginia, and it was a delightful experience, really. I mean, we complained about being in the military, but we had lots of free time, and I had lots of friends, at least in the California phase, because it was the National Guard unit that just